poll by the Council on Alcohol and Drug Abuse released today found nearly 60% of people surveyed felt the area is more dangerous post-Katrina.
We've gathered here a diverse group of law enforcement officials and community leaders to talk about reducing our crime problem and to find out how you can get involved in the effort to protect your community and your family. And
we will start our discussion by looking at one of the root causes of our crime problem. And for that, we go to Dennis and the special agent in charge of the Drug Enforcement Administration, Bill Renton.
And Mr. Renton, you've been in charge of the DEA here in the New Orleans area for 3 years, you tell me. How has the drug situation here changed since Katrina?
Well, Dennis, post-Katrina, we've seen a lot of the major players in the metropolitan area who were significant drug traffickers flee the city for a period of time, go to Houston, go to other cities where they were able to make connections with other drug traffickers there, and were able to secure some drugs. I don't really think that we have more drugs in the city than we had before Katrina. We certainly have a lot less population, but it seems that we have a tremendous amount of people engaged in retail drug distribution. New Orleans has, before Katrina and after Katrina, been a retail drug distribution center. There is not any transshipment of drugs to other locations.
Why is it leading to so much violence now? It seems like it's leading to more violence now than before Katrina.
There's a number of reasons for that, I'm sure, and I'm sure there's people here better qualified than I to say, but our youth today this is a serious situation. We have a number of people who are homeless, who have their houses were destroyed by Katrina. Affordable housing is almost non-existent. Public housing has been closed. And we have people squatting in houses. We have, there's an estimate that I heard of 30 to 40% of the juveniles in the city of New Orleans are here without their parents. They have no parental supervision. And our youth, this is really a phenomena of young people. Everybody wants to say drugs are the major cause of the shootings, and that may be. Drugs is certainly not a good thing, and it's a contributing factor. But right now, I believe that our young people have absolutely no dispute resolution skills. They have this thug culture of kill and be killed. They have no expectation to live. They have really not a lot to live for, and it's really a bleak situation.
Are they fighting over drug territory? Is it a turf war?
We've recently arrested a person who had lived in Gertown before the storm, moved out to Kenner, and is now traveling to the 5th Police District, which is the 9th Ward, not the lower 9th Ward, but the 9th Ward, to sell drugs on a daily basis. And the people that was in the 9th Ward prior to the storm, there are some turf battles because turf's not what it used to be. I mean, New Orleans is not a gang city per se, I don't think. I think it's more of a neighborhood city. The drug associations were loosely confederated around neighborhoods, and I believe that there is some displaced neighborhoods when people are causing some shootings, but a lot of it is also because someone disrespected somebody or perceived they was disrespected, or somebody...
As you say, don't have resolution skills.
Absolutely, no dispute resolution skills whatsoever.
Let's talk to some of the people who really spend their lives in the community. Al Mims, you have been around for 20-odd years on the streets. What are you seeing that may be different post-Katrina?
With all respect to him, drugs is economic development to some people. It's a way out of poverty. It's the way of life glorifying. And the thug culture, as he said, a lot of these kids, many of them are wrapped up in this. You know, their parents, they got a whole family of thugs. The drugs, and I'm wearing this shirt because drugs, I've been over 2,000 funerals in the last 15 years. You know, we had 200, 300, 400 people killed. Drugs, trying to get drugs, they're trying to glorify drugs. And people don't think...
You know, to a person, when we talked about doing this particular forum, to a person, they said, the issue goes back to the family. That's a very touchy subject. One, it's parental responsibility. How do you make parents responsible for kids?
Well, let me say this, and some of my colleagues may differ, but there are some people that's not going to be responsible. They're not going to change. They want to be what they want to be, and people don't want to hear that. They're lost. They are people who are lost. You can't help them. Then we have a need, if the mayor's listening, we need to have a need for drug treatment in this city for people who want.
We're going to get to that later on. That's a big issue. But actually, what I want to ask you about is this job opportunity issue. People are turning to drugs for economic development. there are a lot of job opportunities
And
here that aren't going to
Lots of
kill you.
jobs.
And some of these jobs with drug gangs really don't pay that much money, do they?
No, let me tell you
and-
something.
and they
To
risk
be
their
honest with you,
lives. I don't
people
get
think
it.
that it's glorifying, but I've tell guys that the risk that you take out there, you making less than $6 an hour, but it's the perception. It's the perception that
Is that true, Mr. President?
Absolutely. There's not a lot of money being made in these retail sales. There's not any big profit margin for the person out there on the street corner who's risking their life. Absolutely not. And frankly, right now, most of the people on the street corners that we're seeing now, a lot of the drug traffickers or the guys that's going in the abandoned houses, setting up distribution centers, are sending out juveniles, which are basically untouchable in federal court, and the city has no services currently to deal with juveniles, or very limited services.
Reverend Willie Gable has also been in the community for a couple of decades, I guess. You've seen this ebb and flow. What can be done within the community?
Well, one of the things that I think is critical is to give the young people some alternatives. Our young people right now lack the skills. There are a lot of jobs, but the young people don't know carpentry. They have not learned the brick masonry. So they turn to drugs. What we're involved with
Do they
now,
not believe in school? Is that just out?
in many cases, they have lost hope and they're in pain. And what we're trying to do, Pastor John Raphael, with the Enough Project, we're trying to give them a way out. And as of today, we are involved with a new initiative that's actually called Gang Resistance Education and Training, that's sponsored by the U.S. Marshals, where the faith-based groups will be working with parent and the child for 6 weeks to work with them to develop relationships and to show them that they don't have to follow the road that others have been following. When they don't see any alternatives, it's easy to find this glorified
Wait a minute.
But they
Don't find any
they see death. They see violence.
There are restaurants. You don't need any skills to be a waiter. You don't need any skills to work in a department store or a gas station. Those are alternatives.
Absolutely, and yet there are signs all over the place. But for most of these young people, they don't see the service jobs as something that they ought to be doing. And many of them literally are afraid to approach it because they lack basic skills of interviewing, basic skills of life skills. They just do not have them.
Pastor, what are churches doing about this kind of thing? Is your church involved in bringing families in and helping young people learn how to interview and get these kinds of jobs?
First thing our church has done is we have looked out to see what training jobs are available, and Louisiana Technical College have training free. Our church has been looking around the Woodmill subdivision and helping young people to know that you can go to Louisiana Technical College and get free training. Furthermore, the problem today is they don't see that the monies for jobs are not sustaining wages. You have to have a wage that sustains families.
Not enough to support a family is what you're saying?
That's exactly right.
But some of these low-paying drug jobs aren't enough to sustain a family either.
Yes, but
And they risk their lives.
But they think that's quick money. It's difficult to go to school for a year and a half, so they think I can get out there and make a quick dollar, and it doesn't work out.
And they don't
for 'em.
understand that if they work in a restaurant at a low-paying job for a year, they can move up and eventually get a job that will support their family.
Right, they have low motivation.
Well-
They can't see themselves doing that for a year.
Dr. Meza, you were sort of in the early days of charter schools. Now our whole world has changed. There are a great many charter schools, and the expectations are higher. This is not a discussion about public schools at all, but it is about the value of schools in kids' lives. Are you seeing what this gentleman is saying, where perhaps they're seeing a future if I get an education?
Absolutely. The major difference is that through the charter school initiative, parents choose schools. So you have the first step of commitment. It's very similar to a contract. They choose a school, and each school asks them to join them in partnership. What has been lacking historically is the absence of the initial parental involvement. So the first step is very clear. It is much stronger. The challenge we're having, however, as you raise accountability, we've lost students historically. We need to find a way to have a plan for an alternative, what I would call a catching of those students who fall through the first level of accountability. Students have to stay in school. You close the school door, you open up a prison door. That's very, very clear. What we have found is that All of our students need more involvement in counseling. We need to focus more on skills and not provide them with information about drugs, but build within them social resistance so they can say no and have the skills to do that, not only in terms of their peers, their students, but in their families. The models that our children deal with every day create strong challenges. What we're trying to do is build actually adult skills in young children to survive.
What do you do, excuse me, if you have parents that don't care? How do you help a kid?
Well, if you don't have parents that care, we look for a surrogate parent, we look for a grandmother, we look for an older person, we look for a mentor. Our counseling staff works very closely with the children. We can't accept if a parent doesn't care. We have to care about these children. We can't allow them to fall with these high expectations for them. They don't meet the expectations, they leave school, and unfortunately the next step is that they're on the street.
Darlene Cosanza, Crime Stoppers has been involved in trying to get the community more involved, trying to get people more involved in crime prevention. What are you doing to accomplish that?
Well, we're certainly trying to be more grassroots. We're going out and speaking to as many neighborhood organizations as we can. Certainly trying to bring in the faith-based churches, because the message here is that everybody plays a role in these children's lives, in stopping crime and helping law enforcement. And we're seeing a greater interest by the community to get involved. We're getting more calls to our hotline because I think people realize it's everyone's responsibility.
But part of the problem has been trust. Isn't that right, Sheriff? I mean, trust.
Yes.
In a lot of neighborhoods, people don't trust the police. They don't want to cooperate with the police. And that you found that in Jefferson Parish.
Yes, but what happens, we've turned it around. They're starting to trust us again. Our murder rate down is substantially down. We've only had 8 murders so far this year, and we've solved 7 of them because of the trust, because people are calling Crime Stoppers. People are calling us. When we go out, when there's a murder, we canvass that whole area, and we get those tips. And
How are
people
you
talk
turning
to
this?
us.
How are you overcoming this distrust?
They just trust us now because we're in there. And we're doing some tough things in the neighborhood. And although I've been criticized by some quarters that what we're doing is racist, I know what the crime is. I don't go where the color is, I go where the crime is. And what I'm telling you, my black constituents welcome what we're doing because it's making it safe. And I tell people, we may be stepping on toes, but we're not burying anybody anymore.
I want to go back to Al Mims. Al Mims, 6 months ago, made the statement, which just sort of blew our minds, that parents have become afraid of their children in some cases.
That's true.
One, how do you correct that? And 2, for those which we have been told in some neighborhoods, even if they have witnessed a crime, feel the fear of, I'm not going to tell because I don't want to ruin my relationships in the neighborhood, even though somebody was killed they might have known. How do you overcome something like that?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say this: everything that everybody here has something to offer. It's not a sprint. This is a marathon. We didn't get like this overnight. Parents want to be their children's best friend. Some of the morals and values that we were raised on, Reverend Gabriel, and they've gotten away from this. We have to go back to where we started from, and and you have to stay on it, stay on it, stay on it, stay on it, but and not get frustrated. And the neighborhood have to be. When the police get involved or the sheriffs get involved, it's pretty much too late. We have to. I mean, they do what they can. They're not social workers. They're here to arrest and things. We have to be responsible for our children.
Tell us why, in some cases, people don't cooperate with police. Is it because they're afraid of their own children or the neighbors? Is it because sometimes their children are paying the rent with that drug money? What are the reasons?
All that. And let me say this to you. In neighborhoods, and people don't like to hear this, but I'm going to tell the truth. Drug dealers are heroes. They're Robin Hoods. And it's paying the bills. I mean, people are giving youngsters money to go and bring this down here. So,
and who makes them Robin Hoods? Who makes them heroes?
some of the parents. Some of the parents, the same, you know, and I hate to say it, the 50 Centses and the Snoops and things, they're not icons. We need to tell our children that. It's not.
What do you say to that?
I agree with everything he said. He's telling you like it is. We for some reason, we got to a point where we thought school wasn't important. All of us know, I know that I didn't use drugs when I was a child because of my parents and because of the parental. I was more frightened of my parents than I was of the police. And kids in the city don't have that now. I also knew that I wanted to one day be something. I didn't know what exactly, but I wanted to be something. And I knew the best way to be there is to go to school and to do well in school and try my best. And I was encouraged to do that by my parents. That's sorely lacking, and male role models are sorely lacking in the community. And it's wonderful to hear Al and other people here talk and do the things that they do. They don't just talk the talk, they walk the walk, and they're out there every day doing it. We try to do that. Law enforcement tries to do that, but we don't have resources to try and to give some kind of parental supervision to these young folks. But it really is sad when you see what you're saying, mothers taking drug money from their children to help pay their rent. It's really a shame.
So really, this is a very core issue. Are there laws that say, as a parent, you have these responsibilities for the
For
actions of your
juveniles, for
children?
people that are under the age of 17 in the state of Louisiana.
Do we ever arrest anybody because their child has done something bad? Stopped it instantly like that?
We do.
There's no federal
You do?
laws.
Yes, we do.
In cases, I've spent a lot of time in juvenile court in Jefferson Parish and Orleans. But let me tell you something, the courts are
No,
overwhelmed.
they've arrested the parent, not the
Yeah,
child.
the parents to do the right thing. There are parents who have abused children. A parent abuses a child when they don't give them love. And then when a child drop out of 8th grade, what was that parent at? You know, you're not giving that child any kind of leadway in life.
Reverend Gable, what can the community do to turn this around, to make these drug characters less heroic, to show that it's a crime, it's a problem for the community that's hurting the whole community?
I think the community is doing it now. We don't see all of it, but in Central City right now, with Pastor John Raphael and other clergy in that area, we've been out for the last almost 30 days, every day in Central City. And we can say from Simon Boulevard to Claiborne, Martin Luther King to Jackson, there has not been a murder. And we've had over 200 people, and Beatty's been out there with us, and it's made a difference, the presence. In fact, we've had enough signs up, and what we hope to do is to spread this, the great program that I was just talking about, the gang resistance education and training program. We hope to model this across the city, because this will have community individuals with law enforcement working with families. And this is a systemic problem. We're not talking about 16, 17, and 18. We've got to get them at 10, 11, and 12 and step forward.
And the parents involved as well.
But this requires the parent to be there with them. And we're going to the parent saying, your child matters, and we love you, we love your children. When any person dies, a life is lost. We need to remember them. Every life has value. And we don't remember all of those young people who are dead right now, all the potential, all of the possibility. So we have a responsibility. All of us have a responsibility to stand up and step up
But
and
doesn't
do our part.
It can start so young, when you mentioned the 10, 11, 12-year-old, to the parent who notices the child who comes home with some very expensive shoes.
Absolutely.
Or drives up in a car.
Absolutely.
Very young. And doesn't say anything, and turns the head, then that's a statement.
Absolutely. And what we have to do, the challenge has to be to the child and to the parent, to make that parent accountable, to hold that parent accountable to the community. They have to become stakeholders in the community. They have to feel that this community belongs to them. A drug dealer told me one time, I didn't take your streets, you gave them to me.
Beatty Landis, Silence and Violence, your program is trying to take back the streets with weekly walks. Tell us how that's working and what you're trying to do exactly.
Well, we've been trying since the January 11th March to City Hall to find a way to sustain the energy and solidarity that we all felt on that day, and the determination to act as a
This was
city.
the protest after several shootings and murders.
Yes, in my neighborhood, the Marigny Bywater, we lost 2 artists over the course of less than a week, and that's what prompted us to march
And
to City
Nikita
Hall.
Shaver's brother, De Niro, was also
Yeah.
shot.
Who is also a friend of mine. And with the city walks that we've begun, each Sunday evening we walk from one neighborhood into a different neighborhood and hold a small reception at an establishment in the new neighborhood, the second neighborhood. And that is just meant to provide an opportunity for citizens to be on the streets in the evening on a regular basis, establishing that we deserve to be on the streets, we are the ones who should be on the streets and not the criminals, and to link those neighborhoods in an active, physical
Meet your
kind
neighbor.
of way.
Meet your neighbor and
neighbor.
say, it's not us against them. I mean,
Right.
we're all
To remind New Orleanians that virtually all of us are on the same page with respect to this problem, and that we should be standing together. We're so much more powerful that way.
And Nikita Shavers, you talked at that protest about going to college and wanting to come back and be in politics, be a political figure. You've taken a leave of absence from college, as I understand it, to be involved in this Court Watch program with Silence is Violence. And the Court Watch program, what's the objective of that exactly?
Well, coming down here after being in Florida for 1.5 years, you know, I've came to realize that we're having a lot of corruption within our criminal justice system. And our objective with our court watching program is to basically get into the courts and observe, make sure that everything is, you know, going as it should be going, as far as the DA's side, public defender's side, as well as on the judge's behalf. And it's just basically...
So that these crimes just don't slip through the cracks.
Yes.
So you're asking for volunteers who will literally go into the courts,
Yes.
sit and monitor a whole trial?
Yes.
Or you all recently met with DA Eddie Jordan,
Yes.
and I understand a big part of it was talking about the citizens who want to give information but are afraid, how to protect them.
Yes.
Could you elaborate on what that meeting was about?
The biggest concern we have is the witness protection program. And that's from personal experience, you know, with dealing with my brother's case is, you know, we want the community, we want the city, we want people to come forward, you know, with information that they have, but do we have the resources to protect them? You know, it's hard to sit here and ask someone to, you know, put your life on the line, knowing the crime, you know, knowing their life that they could lose, you know, by coming forward on behalf of someone else. Do we as the city, do we as the DA's office have the resources to protect these people?
And that's been a concern partly because criminals have been right back out on the streets after committing these crimes. Police arrest them over and over again because the criminal justice system, according to some critics, has been broken. Is it getting better, Rafael Goyeneche?
Actually, it is getting better. I mean, the problems that we were experiencing post-Katrina were there pre-Katrina, but no one saw them. Katrina blew the facade off the criminal justice system. And the people that have come back recognize now what Article 701 is. How many other jurisdictions in the country can quote a codal provision from the law books? Right. And people know what Article 701 is. That is a ray of hope. There is the potential to fix the problems that exist. There are some good things that are happening right now.
Why do you, I mean, you are on the periphery all the time, why do you think this city is so violent?
Well, I think that obviously there's social reasons and there are people in this forum that are better equipped to discuss that. But from a criminal justice perspective, particularly in Orleans Parish, there hasn't been consequences that have been uniformly handed out for repeat and violent offenders. And one of the good things that's in the works right now within the district attorney's office, we've always addressed problems in the criminal justice system on the cheap and piecemeal. Well, we've made a substantial investment in the New Orleans Police Department raising salaries. And we've just done that post-Katrina with salaries for assistant district attorneys. The problem is that many of the experienced assistant district attorneys only have 2 to 3 years of experience. Imagine if your most seasoned investigators only had 2 to 3 years of experience. One of the things that's been lacking is an infusion of experienced legal talent in the district attorney's office. And last week, the City Council approved a budgetary measure in which they're going to provide an additional $20,000 in funding for each of the 6 attorneys working in the violent offender unit of the district attorney's office. That unit is being directed towards the repeat and violent offenders that have been walking through the revolving door in the criminal justice system. The salaries will be raised to $80,000, and now you'll be able to work in that unit. You have to have at least 50 jury trials as lead counsel. Wow. That'll be an immediate infusion of experienced legal talent that will help translate some of the arrest of these repeat and violent offenders into convictions, and those are the consequences that need to be swift and certain out there to serve as a deterrent to crime.
And the law enforcement angle of this is sort of a bright light because things are coming together. Not that we still don't have major cracks in it, but coming together. But it does go back to the societal issues. And when we hear that 80% of people in prisons say they have had drug problems, that is enormous.
30,000 people.
So when they come out, there's no rehab necessarily. What, under 500 beds for over 30,000 prisoners. Where do we begin with stopping that circle back into prison?
Well, first, I think my response is, wow, I think we need to go straight through Letterman time to get this thing taken care of this evening. But to be quite honest with you, right now, the Office of Addictive Disorders here in Louisiana says that the state is serving perhaps 8% of the people who need substance abuse treatment. We don't have a medical detox in the metro area. When someone tells me, oh, we can send them over to Oxnard, every hospital is required to take a person who is in trauma. But what they will do is keep them for 24 hours, dry them out, and put them back on the street. That's not detox. We don't have a medical detox. There's one social detox program in the area, and that's in Jefferson Parish. A number of the treatment programs that we have in the area are not as viable as they used to be. We have more and more coming back. We have very good programs in Orleans Parish, good programs in Jefferson Parish. Nothing in Plaquemines, nothing in St. Bernard. It's an issue that not only do you not have the services to the level we need to have, but then you have the care providers. I lost one of our staff this past year who had an opportunity and went with it, but when I was sitting when she first came back after Katrina, she was dealing with clients who were there for DWI, and they were talking about their issues and so forth. All the time she remembered, couldn't help but remember, that her home was in St. Bernard, and it took 14 feet of water, and she was wondering what she was going to do. A lot of these care providers are individuals who also hurt. And we're losing them. We lost a lot of the psychiatrists, psychologists post-Katrina, and most of them have not come back. We've lost a lot of the social workers. It's not just a matter, as Reverend Gable has said, there's a systemic issue here on so many levels, it's unbelievable. That doesn't mean there's not hope, but it does mean that if I had a person today who needed to be in medical detox, I'm going to have to put them on a waiting list in Baton Rouge.
But today, in your announcement concerning the poll that you did, you said that's right off the bat we need to have a medical detox center. There are 200 beds, I understand, in this area, and we need 2,000?
It depends on who you're listening to. In the metro area, in Odyssey House, you have a number of beds. You have some at Bridge House. You have some at River Oaks, which is a for-profit program. We used to have a lot of what we call mom and pop shops here that are no longer around. There are programs that used to be run by churches that are no longer around. And even though not all of them were licensed, they at least filled a gap, and we don't have that. If we had the number of persons who could be in a residential facility, yes, we could probably do 2,000 beds. The problem is, who's going to pay for a residential when we can do it outpatient?
Odyssey House also says that it costs $18,400 to $26,000 a year to incarcerate someone, $1,800 to $4,700 a year to give someone drug treatment. And drug treatment is really essential if we're going to get people out of this cycle.
But it's not
of violence.
residential drug treatment, though. I don't know anybody who does it for $1,800. Now, there are nonprofit programs that get support.
But still, the point is we need this drug treatment to break this cycle of crime and violence.
It's just like the system with the courts. If you take a person into court and their case is never tried, what does that say to the criminal and their peers? Most of us are going to get through.
The other point was that if those are with Odyssey, that's adults.
Right.
We had the only licensed youth treatment program in the city prior to Katrina.
And they don't exist now.
And so we don't have any licensed treatment program.
Do you, in walking the streets and talking to these young people, do you hear them say, I want help?
Oh, all the time. All the time. That's the first thing
I want out of this
What do
life?
you mean they want help? They want
They
help
say,
with their drug addiction?
I want to get off the streets. I want to get off the drugs. And this is why we came up with the way out. Because we go to them and we're talking and we do these crime walks and they say, look, we give them, say, look, you can do better, we can. And the first thing they say, well, okay, I want a way out. And now we say, okay, where are we going to send you? Where are the resources? So we now realize that we can't go out and give them a glimmer of hope without having something there. And so what we're trying to do is put programs into place and systems work in a systematic way.
Involving drug treatment as well?
Drug treatment, jobs,
Job
training, all of this is available, just as Pastor Glover said. We've got training programs that can train them as carpenters, give them something that they can hold on to for a long period of time. What we've got to do, you know what our problem is, and I think maybe it's right now? We've not been talking to one another and working together with one another. We've been working in silos and fighting one another rather than just coming together. And I think now that we're all trying to realize if we all don't get in this ship and row together, we're all going to sink together.
On that note, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back and have much more discussion on this very important topic.
You know what would be great? Having a DVD player wherever you go. At the Chrysler National Minivan Sale, get a factory-installed rear-seat DVD player at no extra charge. Plus, very well-qualified buyers get 0% financing on J.D. Power & Associates' highest-ranked van in initial quality, Chrysler Town & Country, with 2 rows of stow-and-go seats. Your kids will thank you, and you'll thank us. Discover America's hottest products at your Chrysler dealer.
Check out the new Cindy Crawford Home Leather Collection right now at Rooms to Go.
Disney on Ice presents Princess Wishes, where believing is just the beginning. With special guest Tinkerbell, Disney on Ice presents Princess Wishes, where little girls' dreams come true every day.
Playing May 3rd through the 6th at home at Terrebonne Civic Center. Get your tickets today.
No one knows horsepower like Dodge. And now the power of National Truck Month has been extended, along with a no extra charge Hemi V8 upgrade on the Ram 1500. Or get great deals on our hardest working trucks, the spacious Ram 2500 Mega Cab and Ram 3500 with an available Cummins turbo diesel engine. Get up to $5,000 cash allowance plus the no extra charge Hemi engine upgrade on one of the longest lasting, most durable family of full-size pickups. It's been extended. National Truck Month at the Southern Truck Stop, your Southern Dodge dealer, home of America's hottest products.
Welcome back to our special live forum, Crime Prevention, a Road to Recovery special.
We want to mention that the New Orleans Police Superintendent Riley was invited tonight and for some reason was not able to make it.
And we were talking about drug treatment before we broke off, and drug treatment has always been, it's something that politicians don't want to talk about. They'd rather talk about locking someone up and throwing away the key, because that's tough on crime. Drug prevention, you're soft on crime. Isn't that right, Sheriff?
No, I think everybody recognizes
Really?
root causes. I agree with that.
Politicians are willing to say, I'll choose drug treatment over locking people up and throwing away the key?
I am.
Okay.
You are, but facts show that a lot of money has been reprioritized to the law enforcement end of it. And part of that perhaps is because people's fears are getting louder and louder. So we'll spend more money
we want to get rid of them,
for
just
the
get them off
equipment,
the
et
street,
cetera.
but they're
That's
going to
right.
come back. That's
the message that we're hearing, is that they will come back.
Right.
They are coming back, and they're going to have the same set of problems. And then we have the problem of, well, we expect you to go out and get a job. We don't want you to repeat this. Who's going to hire the ex-con? That's a huge issue.
A 23-year-old with a 4th grade education, addicted to drugs and no job skills.
I don't know, I'm not a drug treatment specialist or a professional in that field, but I don't know anybody's getting off of drugs can be analogous to getting off of cigarettes. You can't quit cigarettes unless you want to quit cigarettes. You
Right.
can't quit alcohol unless you want to quit, or drugs. To say that we can incarcerate people in locked up drug treatment centers and they're going to come out drug-free, they'll go right back to drugs. People have to want to be out of there. They have to have some hope. It's really sad to hear, and it's sad in our community that, as you said, we idolize rap singers, we idolize drug traffickers. We ought to idolize these ministers and some of these other people who are here every day trying to help people. We ought to idolize people like Sheriff Lee, who, he'd probably be embarrassed to tell you this, after the hurricane, I think the hurricane brought out the best in the good people and the worst in the bad people. The sheriff was offered cars. DEA was able to give some vehicles to New Orleans Police, St. Bernard. We had intended to give some to Jefferson Parish. The sheriff said, we're a relatively wealthy parish. We'll survive this. Give these cars to St. Bernard and give it to New Orleans. They have nothing. We've had people come together, as some of the other people saying, to talk that never talked before. We're talking about regionalization, and all of this requires resources. Drug treatment requires resources. Law enforcement requires resources. And the one thing the city does not have now is resources.
But Mr. Renton, I mean, you are involved in drug enforcement. I mean, that's your job. Would it help to have, more resources poured into drug treatment to get these guys? I mean, even though I agree with you, people have to want to get treatment before it really works, but at least expose them to it, get them in there, show them the value of it.
It's certainly one of the things that we need to do in order to try and turn the situation around. It's a component of it. It's not the answer by itself, but to not have drug treatment available to people who are desperately seeking is horrendous.
But there's also the thought that, in fact, prisons are like a growth industry, and money makers, or they have jobs for people. A lot of employees, they have vendors. So that the motivation perhaps legislatively might not be to support a drug rehab thing as much as let's keep our prisons strong.
Well, there's an issue too, and I think the ED agent has kind of brought this up. For some time, this country has taken all of its, quote, war on drugs money and spent about 70% of it in incarceration and interdiction. 30% of those federal dollars goes for treatment and prevention. I would love to see one of these days to where they could be equal. The problem is on a national level, on a state level, and on a local level. It's reflected that way because people get caught up into the concept, the idea that what we need to do is throw them in jail. And more prisons are having substance abuse treatment programs. If we began to turn that around, but you have to turn it around on a local level, a state level, and a federal level because it's reflected. The money that comes into a city, for example, generally comes from the feds. The Office of Addictive Disorders in Louisiana, which does its best, about 60% of its money comes from federal block grants. It doesn't come from the state of Louisiana. Prior to Katrina, the city of New Orleans wasn't putting a dime into drug prevention and treatment programs.
There's a misconception out there that people that are arrested and convicted of drug possession go to jail. In Orleans Parish, that rarely, if ever, happens. Right. In fact, only about 25% of the individuals convicted of distribution go to jail. So it's not that we're sending people to jail for drug use. The problem is most of those people are going to get probation. There are no programs for those people to break that cycle. They go right back into the same environment that begot their criminal conduct in the first place.
The people who commit more violent crimes are also addicted, according to these figures. 30,000 of some 38,000 people in Louisiana prisons are addicted to drugs by their own assessment.
And I think we need to admit to the fact that it's not just hard drugs, the cocaine, the heroin. If you go up and down our streets right now in New Orleans, you'll see individuals drinking every day, trying to anesthetize themselves because of the pain, for whatever the reason might be. And not only that, but the population that has come in to help in the rebuilding, they are drinking. So we're going to have a larger situation.
And those cause all kinds of problems. Alcoholism is a lot of problems. But we don't get a sense that alcoholics are robbing you or with the shooting of the guns all the time.
But
that is more.
It starts there.
John King, your group did a survey that shows some of the changes since Katrina.
Right. One of the things a year ago we asked the question, and we found out that 11% of the respondents said they were drinking more. About 9% said, or 13% were drinking more, 11% were using more prescription drugs, 9% were using more illegal drugs. This year we asked the question, do you believe that drug abuse is a growing problem, has gotten worse after post-Katrina? And we asked the same thing about drinking, obviously abusive drinking and binge drinking. Better than 40% of the people said, yes, it's getting worse. Now, when we asked them, are you drinking more? Are you using drugs more? Of course, we tended to get a smaller percentage of individuals because most people like to think of the problem as being somebody else's issue, and that's part of, I think, if you're asking where are the answers, where the answers are, is not enough individuals are standing up for their own individual self. I am a member of a family. I'm responsible for my family. Once I take care of my family, I can reach out to the families around me and others. But too many people are looking at everybody else to blame. They blame the schools, they blame law enforcement, they blame the courts, they blame social service. Everybody is to blame except for me. And that's not the way it is. And as long as we continue to have that kind of approach and attitude, the problem will continue.
Mr. Walton, I wanted to say this. I'm 53 years old, and I'm an alcoholic in recovery 24 years. And, you know, I had to take responsibility for the biggest fight in my life was overcoming alcohol. Katrina did not make me drink, you know, and I take responsibility for and I talk to the young people, I talk to my son, I talk to my nieces, my nephew, my grandchildren. It sounds embarrassing sometimes, but I want them to know, I don't want to ever forget how bad and how hopeless alcohol had put me down.
You know, we can look at other communities. We don't have to reinvent wheels. You can look at, I think it's Washington, D.C. has a drug czar. Would that be a good idea for us, to have a drug czar who's overlooking programs we need to help set up and maybe trying to get the money for it?
The money will come, but I'm going to say this to you. I said it earlier. Mayor, if you're looking, I've been saying this, we need to have beds, space. Alcohol, as you said, the number one thing, it starts with alcohol. We need to have space for people who are sick. Everybody who get arrested is not a criminal. They got a problem.
Right.
Mr. Renton, we're talking about drugs. What's being done to stop drugs from coming into our community?
Well, there's a number of things that are being done. Certainly the borders of America, we pay a price with drugs coming into the country because of the freedoms that we enjoy. We don't have borders like the Soviet Union had during the Cold War. And that's what it would take. It would take the military and the borders to try and stop some of the drugs. And drug traffickers are pretty innovative. They would figure out some way to try and get around it. When I started my career in law enforcement here, there was marijuana ships coming in, shrimp boats coming in constantly with big loads of marijuana, which is a big problem. There's interdiction occurring at every level in state, local, and federal law enforcement. There's border interdiction, there's highway interdictions, but there's really, we seize a lot of drugs on the highways in Louisiana, and this is a pretty good indicator of what's happening in the city of New Orleans. The vast majority of the drugs, 95% of the drugs that's seized in the highways, especially on the North Shore, are not destined for New Orleans, they're destined for other cities.
That's an interesting point, because we do hear about those traffic stops, how they seize drugs on I-12. Why are there not seizures like that on I-10?
Well, there are some seizures, but they're generally small, and they're people coming back to the city of New Orleans. We've made a number of them since the hurricane. We've seized marijuana and cocaine, 1 or 2, sometimes 5 kilos of cocaine in cars coming to New Orleans in interdiction efforts. But we're talking about drugs. It needs to be, law enforcement knows we'll never be able to arrest our way out of the drug problem. We need to start, and it's sad to say that in the city of New Orleans right now, and in the surrounding, the metropolitan area, I hate to keep saying the city of New Orleans, there's 17-year-olds that we have no hope of reaching. You know, to try and say, let's try and talk to 17-year-olds when they're arrested, when they can first become adults, we need to start with kids that are 10 and 11 and 12 and give them some positive role models. And
that's the whole thing about cutting off the demand.
Well, drugs are certainly driven by supply and demand, the laws of supply and demand. And you know, they made a lot of fun of Nancy Reagan for just saying no, but that was a really important program, and it's important. That's why I didn't use drugs. That's why most of us on the set didn't use drugs when we were kids. We were frightened of our parents, we had good parental role models, and we knew that drugs was a ticket to nowhere.
There's also the economic component. And I'm not talking about a drug dealer. I'm talking about the car dealer that gets the cash in hand from some guy who walks in with a roll for a car. or the
Stores
bank,
that buy the
stores.
clothes.
I mean, does that discourage enforcement or discourage the idea that we have to stop this, this sort of activity?
There's federal laws in money laundering, and there are, in fact, some car dealerships in various places that's been locked up and charged with violations for not reporting suspicious transactions. You're required, if you're a lending institution, or a financial institution, or a business, to fill out a government form if someone brings in over $10,000 in cash, or if it's less, if somebody comes with $9,000 constantly. There's a suspicious reporting forms, and certainly the IRS and all the federal agencies are looking at those forms to try and determine who's doing what with kind of bad money.
Sheriff Lee, your response to those who say, okay, we're not going to win this war. Let's take the profit motive out. Let's go ahead and legalize.
Or
and
decriminalize at least.
Decriminalize, and let's get some taxes paid on this.
No, absolutely not. The tests show that somebody under the influence of one marijuana cigarette is a danger to the community. And I don't want drugs on the streets at all.
But is it a health issue? I mean, should it just be a health issue and deal with a health issue and not as a criminal issue?
It's a health issue. If some guy full of marijuana runs into you, kills you.
It's already a health issue. But I mean,
That's
but
certainly a
we've
health
made it,
issue.
in addition to being a health issue, we've made it a criminal issue.
The only way, and I thought early in my law enforcement career, I said, if we're going to give DEA the money, the federal government give the money, why don't the federal government go down to Colombia and bottle the drugs on a thing and then burn it on the docks? Don't let it come in. So look, if you're a farmer and you're making so much money selling drugs to a drug lord, take it and put it on the docks for some illegal ship to come in. Well, then let's go buy it on the docks down in Colombia. It's better put a match to it, and then it won't get here. But there's good reasons for not doing that either. Because then what happens is that once you get Uncle Sam buying a drug, we're just going to make more drugs down in Colombia.
And part of the problem is, and I'm quite sure Renton would confirm this, that as much as the DEA and as much as the Coast Guard and so forth does, they confiscate a small percentage of the illegal drugs coming into this country. The United States is a country that has, what, 5% of the world's population. We consume 80% of its cocaine because we have money and we have a lot of spendable cash. And the approach, the attitude, the philosophy is we want to feel good. And whatever makes me feel good is important and is valuable. And it is sold in lots of different ways. For example, you could this evening walk out and within a block of this studio find any drug you wanted. And they don't advertise on billboards, they're not in magazines, but people know where to get them. Now that is good advertising and that's good marketing because there is an atmosphere of this is an acceptable lifestyle. And that's part of the problem.
More in the New Orleans area than other areas of the country?
I wouldn't say that. I would say that there is, I mean, I've been in this city for 10 years. I'm not a native. But one of the things that I know is that one of the things that we start off with is an attitude, and this brought up earlier by Al, that alcohol flows freely here. And because of that, it makes an allowance for us to say maybe in many cases it's a rite of passage for doing so. Because we are a port city, it's an easy place for it to come into, but Louisiana and New Orleans is no different from New York or Philadelphia or Los Angeles. The issue is that right now we are in a real crisis mode in so many ways, and I do a lot of traveling around the country and some training I've done this last year, and people ask the question, well, why can there be that kind of problem when you ought to be focusing your attention on rebuilding? And I said, well, you try to rebuild for 20 months, and you begin to lose your resiliency.
Well, the thing that that's been horrific to me is that the type of crimes that have been occurring because of drugs, the way they have been murdering one another, shooting in the head. I mean, it's a clear indication that the eye on crime is important because this is just heartless,
It's more and more brazen.
I mean, just
and this shooting out of the car windows.
And Pastor Glover, you want to talk about trust. Right. That's an issue that you're concerned about.
If you would look at the research literature for the last 40 years, say three ways to deal with this problem. Number one, prevent it. Number two, you can redirect personality. Number three, lock them up and throw the key away. We've opted for the third position. If we would get back to prevention, which is what we've been doing, working with the cops, clergy program with Sheriff Lee. Sheriff Lee won the trust back in the Woodmere subdivision because when we met with him, we asked for mutual protection. Protect Woodmere like you would protect an upper strata community. There's not a time, seems like I walk out my door, the church, I live in the neighborhood where I pastor. I mentor at the school where I pastor. Our community improvement director with the Civic Association where I pastor. When we met with Sheriff Lee, he put the police on the street, they're on the street, and we're gonna hit the streets on Saturday with over 20-something people. We walk the neighborhood, meet the people. We establish a youth center and a piece of
So
property
this is
that
why
we just
trust
bought.
is coming back,
Yes,
because you
because
are
he
also
did what we
working-
asked him to do. Yes.
And we must say that the same thing. We've developed in New Orleans with Chief Raleigh a relationship where as soon as there is a murder, they are providing us with the victim's name so that clergy now go to both the perpetrator and the victim's families, and we make some sort of intervention at that time so that it does not result in an additional murder. So we have to keep working hand in hand.
Mr. Meza, in the schools, in your schools, your charter schools, what kind of drug prevention programs do you have?
Well, first, nationally, there's been millions and millions of dollars into drug education with no results because they focus on providing information. It's very difficult for an adult to resist. Can you imagine how difficult it is for a child to say no when adults themselves, who are supposed to be responsible and mature, cannot say no? So what we try to do is look at this as a developmental process, looking at the full child, having a clear vision and trying to convince that family that this is a byproduct of poverty. The way out of poverty is through education. The education not at the high school level, but at the post-secondary level.
What's a byproduct of poverty?
A drug and violent culture that we're experiencing today.
Drugs, everyone's using drugs.
That's
I mean,
right.
it's not just poor people.
A question that's
Well,
true.
drug is used by everyone, but when you look at this community and the violent deaths and how you profile it, it's primarily poor African-American people. There's no doubt drug use is throughout America.
Gotcha.
But what we're dealing with today, this crisis centers around children who do not have a chance. The only way they can get a chance is through education. What we haven't done in education is that we haven't provided alternatives for them to receive their full education. We've treated every child in a similar way. If they do not meet the expectations, they fall on the street. The dropout rate is close to 50%. Yes. That's not good.
So how do we keep them in school?
Well, the first thing we want to do is look at an alternative path for them to stay in school. Every child learns differently. You cannot treat a child, put them in a traditional classroom. Some may have to be involved in some level of, it could be a vocational education, it could be personal learning, it could be an interest level. But what we found with middle school and high school students, they learn best by interest level. And what we try to do is apply the math, the science, the literature to some level that they're very comfortable in. But what we find is that if we treat all children the same and we measure them the same, they will fall out. We cannot a child to continually fail and fail and fail and feel good about themselves.
And I think...
But that school that one of the schools you opened, I interviewed the principal, the new one with all the ninth graders. And it was exactly what you're saying. They're not going to let those kids fail. And if they have to adjust how they teach to that one child, then they're going to do that. It is a different way than perhaps we were educated, but it's with the goal of keeping them in school and giving them the belief that they can have a dream, that they can be something.
What we've talked about tonight is going to stop the bleeding and hopefully immediately have an impact on our quality of life. But 5 years from now, if these children do not stay in school, we will be back here again addressing these issues. Education is the more strategic approach of solving this problem.
I couldn't agree with him, Dr. Moore, any more than I think anybody else here. But you look at the reality of the situation, we have 3 systems in New Orleans. We have yours, which is probably the best. Then we have the small number of schools that the school board is actually operating, and then you have those that are being operated by the state. And most of the kids are not in your schools. And most of the kids are not getting the kind of discipline, they're not getting the kind of intent. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't good teachers in some of those schools. when I came here 10 years ago, one of the things I looked at, and I've been involved in schools and prevention for a long time, and I got into some trouble once a couple of years ago when I said the only thing that's going to help the school system of New Orleans is if they shut it down for a year and start over. Well, Katrina gave us the opportunity, but it's still not there. And I'm not saying that very glibly, but we do have good students and good systems with the charter schools. We've got a lot of the other kids who are not having those opportunities, and many of them back in the same kind of situation that we're
having those opportunities.
That's correct, and I agree with you in relationship to prevention. Prevention is more than just telling people information about drugs. Absolutely. It's giving them the resiliency skills, it's giving them the ability to know how to make good decisions and to find out that it's cool to do so.
And that's what
if you don't change the heart, if you don't change the heart, you'll never change the head.
Yeah.
Right.
And someone has to, we have to continuously prick the heart of individuals.
Harry Connick was a leader in drug testing by hair, and before Katrina, and I don't know if that's still happening all over, but it was resisted tremendously in the public schools as saying it was some kind of law enforcement state. But to give some of the young kids the ability to resist some of the peer pressure by saying, I want to play ball, or I want to be in the band, or I want to be in the whatever, to say I can't use drugs, was a wonderful program. Why we resisted that, I just can't fathom that.
That was one of the reasons why we started our Safe School Hotline.
We're out of time. Thank you all for taking part here tonight.
Yes,
we really appreciate your
hour.
involvement and your contributions. We have, you can go to our website, wwltv.com, and you'll find links to each of the websites of the organizations these folks represent. And Chief Riley was going to be here. We invited him, but he had another commitment tonight. We want to thank all of our panelists for joining us in this discussion on what can be done in our effort to fight crime.
And again, it is not just a battle for the police and deputies. It requires that everybody be more vigilant and involved.
More than a year and a half after Katrina, we're in a rebuilding phase, and as we fight this surge in violent crime, we have a chance to make criminal justice more effective, a chance to make the metro area a much safer place to live.
Thank you for watching.
Insurance company is supposed to protect you, but they often avoid their responsibility by minimizing your claim. I'm attorney Frank D'Amico Jr. For more than 20 years, I've been getting my clients the justice they deserve from insurance companies.
Call Frank D'Amico Jr. at 525-7272. It's the big grand opening of the all-new A1 Covington Superstore. See the biggest inventory of brand name appliances and electronics under one roof. Get special grand opening savings at all 8 A1 locations. We're talking big.
Did you get your spa yet? How about your pool? It's time! And Clearwater Pools and Spas is the place. Truckloads arriving daily. Our biggest selection at our lowest prices of the season. Pool package is only $599. Portable hot tubs just $14.99. 0% interest, same as cash financing. Clearwater Pools and Spas in Covington and Metairie.
Chevy has the most full-size truck models that have over 300 horsepower and can get an EPA estimated 20 miles per gallon highway or better. So go on, live the full-size life. Get $2,000 cash back on any 2007 Chevy Tahoe. For the #1 selling cars and trucks in Louisiana, see your Super Chevy dealers today.
If you need to tow 11,000 pounds, you're going to need 2 trucks. Unless, of course, you're Joe. Joe drives the Ford F-150, the only half-ton pickup in America that can tow 11,000 pounds all by itself. Joe, how's that possible?
Fully boxed frame, Mike.
Fully boxed frame. Or not fully boxed. The choice is yours, but how are you going to drive 2 trucks at once?
Get $4,000 in total savings on an F-150 with Chrome package or 0% APR for 60 months. See your local Southern Quality Ford dealer.
Just because car accidents happen fast doesn't mean they should be handled that way. Don't let the insurance company rush you into a settlement that isn't in your best interest. Call me. I'm attorney Frank D'Amico Jr. I'll do what it takes to get you the justice you deserve.
Call the law offices of Frank D'Amico Jr.
Watch the Bernie Mac Show tonight at 10:30 on My 54.